From this very yard, 33 years ago in 1 month, Linda Bishop lived her last day. She was 15 years old, and she was the sister of these two ladies, Denise Kuchavik and Diane Bishop. On August the 15th, 1975, this man, Michael Berry, drove on this street and stopped at this yard and called Denise to his car. He said he was looking for a babysitter for that night. Denise, only 12, said she could not babysit, but directed Michael Berry to her sister down the street, who was walking the family dog. Later that day, Michael Berry returned to pick up Linda Bishop. He took her home and he murdered her. If you will, the lifetime of torture replayed in Denise's mind every time she is made to recall that regrettable afternoon is awful. Michael Berry had lured and molested other children before Linda Bishop. He had spent time in jail, and he eventually fooled the doctors at Zeller. But the court this time sentenced Michael Berry to 50 to 100 years in prison, sending the message that he should spend the rest of his life, live out the rest of his life in an Illinois prison. But instead, the Bishop family and I, as the Peoria County State's Attorney, have had to appear before the Illinois Prisoner Review Board countless times and for countless years to ask that Berry remain in prison. Why? Because Illinois law permits people like Berry, sentenced before 1978, to have a parole hearing every single year, except in special cases where a hearing might be set out for 3 years. In January of 2007, I appeared with these two ladies and their father at the prison in Canton, Illinois, once again to object to Berry's parole. Incredibly, we learned that Berry had presented himself as a model prisoner, a virtual Jekyll and Hyde character that had taken every counseling class ever offered. Berry noted that he was much better than Johnny Lee Savory, who the parole board, this same parole board, had paroled just a year earlier. Berry commented how all the staff and all the counselors in prison were on his side. He was certain the parole board would grant his parole. And once we saw how this murderer had made himself look before the parole board, we also began to see that they were just about to let him loose. They commented on his wonderful adjustment, his father-like presence among inmates, and the way he lorded over the other more violent criminals. Only when we showed the parole board the real side of Michael Berry did the tide turn, and he has been denied parole again. But let us assure you, they almost let him out. We know. We were there. And now, yesterday, the John Howard Association complains that the parole board is not generous enough. In response, the parole board chairman, Jorge Montez, said that because both sides are complaining about the parole board, then, as if this is the formula for success, that puts us just about in the place we need to be. That self-evaluation is absurd. This board is out of control. It has been weakened by the outrageous political removal of former Peoria Police Chief John Stenson as its own member, and the attempted removal just this past year of former Chicago police officer Sal Diaz. We are here today because the Illinois Prisoner Review Board needs to be tougher and wiser, and they need to be those things now. When it comes to Michael Berry, these women should never again have to share the earth with this violent nutcase. Take note. The people that are seeking release from this let 'em go parole board are the cream of the crud. Or there are several good members of the parole board, but they're dog paddling these days, because in fact they are They are well intended, but sometimes good intentions get outvoted. We had to appear at the prison. How offensive is that? But there we are, appearing at the prison 32 years later. And we showed Mr. Dunn a letter that Michael Berry wrote to their father 2 months before his parole hearing. And in the letter, he said, you know, Linda told me before she died that I was a sick man and I needed counseling. And when I got out, I'll be better. How weird is that? And we would show that to the parole board member, who then realized, I've been scammed. The John Howard Association has become cozy with the parole board, and that's not right. The John Howard Association ought to step back and become what it originally was, a prison watchdog group, not a prisoner watchdog group.